Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SB Reviews, where today we're going to be checking out a track from an act named The White Stripes, titled Seven Nation Army. And if we switch over to here, I personally feel that this track should need no introduction. I'm sure most people know about this. As a music tutor, I am thoroughly familiar with this, having taught this to a lot of different students over the years. We're going to listen through this track from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go, let's do it. What do we got? See, I like the way, and this is something this is an experience that you have through headphones, is that you can hear the guitar come in on the left side there quite aggressively. It's not something you have until that point, because a lot of the time it is just having the bass and the drums. But it explodes in the stereo field. It's really well done. See, it's interesting for several reasons. One, that you have this asymmetry in the stereo field throughout that situation. We have the guitars quite dominant in this part, but then you have like a sub guitar, very kind of quiet on that end, and it just sort of feels a bit uneven. But then the guitar tone itself, despite quite a sort of like an intermediate level at sort of terms of skill level guitar solo, it's the actual tone and the effects channel, the guitar tone, that makes it kind of special. It's what helps it to stand out. And I feel like that's like an underrated and undervalued thing in music, is trying to find a different sound so that it's not just overdone, because I think that's the beauty of music, where you just don't feel the need to make it sound a certain way. That can be the crutch of modern production, where stuff's become so polished and so kind of like squared away that it can sometimes be scary to try something new. But I just don't think that Jack White really cared. He just did whatever he wanted, and he still does. And just having that feedback cut then, just that tension there is tremendous. It's like a 3-act film, isn't it? With verses 1, 2, and 3. And even the fact that it doesn't necessarily like end in tune, that it's just a little bit kind of like discordant. Like, there's just so many cool ideas within this track, but we're going to talk about it more in the conclusion. And so welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from The White Stripes, titled Seven Nation Army. Now, what do we think this track is about? I'm not sure. It's a song where it sounds like Jack White, or the vocalist, is describing going through a difficult time with their adversaries. They're clearly pissed off or unhappy about the situation, you know. They're distrustful of the people around them. They feel like going around behind their back and doing terrible things. But then also they're finding that at the end they want to get away from that opera, and the bloodstains are there and everything, and they're trying to sort of like recover from what they've gone through. And so ultimately I just feel like it goes in 3 stages, with the awareness at the beginning, the secondary being the actual altercation, and the final part being the scrambling away for your dear life. You just can't be bothered with the drama anymore. A Seven Nation Army couldn't hold them back. It's an interesting story. I found, especially with the track I reviewed in the last video for the review series, Blur was song 2, that I think these are more obtuse tracks that aren't necessarily trying to be too literal, and I feel like there's done in a way which, again, more with this one than song 2, because if I'm honest, I didn't really necessarily connect with the vocals of song 2. This does seem a little bit more sort of like intriguing to me. But I think that, if I go through my typical sort of like analysis of these songs that I try and do, I think the vocals are fantastic. I appreciate that we're not trying to necessarily even sing beyond hitting the notes. There's just such attitude behind each word. There's various melodies that are performed, and we do hit the notes quite cleanly for the most part. It's definitely not an overproduced performance here. We're definitely not using auto-tune. A bit of vocal fry occasionally to illustrate or symbolize exasperation with the position they're in, and it's typically just the one vocal take for the majority of it. It's very minimalist as well. A lot of the talking is done by the actual instruments themselves, whether it's the lead guitar parts or the rhythm elements or the bass in the beginning, or the drums as well, the monotonous kind of hum of the quarter notes, which I think is kind of what part of the charm of the White Stripes, is that minimalist approach there, knowing how to tell a story without taking away from that too much, and making it kind of like, making it transcendent. But honestly, he has this kind of consistency with the delivery and approach with telling the story that allows the song to kind of sort of like be connected, but at the same time also infers that regardless of what they've gone through, they maybe learned absolutely nothing from it. So ultimately, I just think we explore our head voice a little bit as well, cleanly, but it's done in a very sort of like quote unquote rocky style way where it's not trying to be too pretty sounding. There's a bit of kind of like ugliness to it, and I dig that. The track itself at 3 minutes 58 is well tended to. Like, it's interesting because again you've got that 3-act kind of quotient where you've got the first, second, and third verses there, and you go into that bam 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 afterwards, and you have that similar kind of resolution or point of intensity with the guitar takes. I love how it explodes in the stereo field. The bass is so dominant with the way that it just plays those several different ideas there from the beginning, and it's just it's relentless. And it's like the drums, the chord note kick snare patterns are some of the easiest ones to review that I've ever done in a music video, simply because, I think Meg White, if I'm not mistaken, Meg, they are that kind of drummer where they know, hey, I have to play the chord notes. I'm not trying to overdo it. I'm simply kind of rolling with the punches, and that's what we have here. There are occasional fills and crescendos and sort of crash hits, but typically we are there to be the metronome. I think when you have the kind of zaniness in the guitar solo that we had, where we have like a very free-flowing organic performance, they're not completely militantly in rhythm or in tempo 100% of the time. It's very free-form and expression. To contrast that with a very sort of like reliable drum beat is sensible. So I love the power chord elements on the side. I love the bends. I love the kind of unique tone to the lead guitars as well. It just makes it more sort of fun to listen to. It shows they're not taking themselves too seriously, but it's also kind of tense and stressful. Kind of like in the way where the vocals kind of sounded like they were like put through like a radio filter to get rid of some of the low end and stuff like that. There's no trying to emphasize the low end of the bass and the vocals in this one. It's meant to not be more complicated than it is. But to have the guitar solo in the middle like that, to have the two verses either side, and to sort of even show further sort of like intrigue or reason for curiosity with the different oscillations and feedback tails there, and the playing with the guitar tones, etc., outside of the main sort of strummed and sort of like big parts, I think is really, it's quite impressive what they're able to sort of squeeze out of a 4-minute track. There was no filler in the song, despite the fact there being every reason for that. It kind of showcases, I think, that in this day and age, where a lot of the focus for people producing music is to try and put everything in all these different sections, sometimes people just want something to nod their heads along to, and this song has 770 million times of people doing that. It's a very popular track on YouTube alone. I think it's like over 1 billion on Spotify. So ultimately, I feel structurally, performatively, it's fantastic. It does the job it needs to do in a very tradesman-like manner. Thematically, sort of like, it's more about this kind of the crying out of the lead guitar or the drama there. The power chord elements are there for force and grit and fire. The drums and bass are there to sort of imply a minor tonality and a bit of kind of like exotic, kind of like sultry kind of like essence with the bow 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 bow, kind of like unusual guitar harmonies in that sort of like chord progression part there, really modulating those major chords there. And we just play with dynamics really like effectively as well. It's not the same loudness the entire time, even though it's been glued quite effectively in post. I mean, studio production is tremendous. I appreciate the polish and flair with it. I like how authentic to the style of music it is. When I say it's polished, despite there being some notable rough edges and it's still been quite a quiet track, especially with today's standards, I mean that like it's produced in a way where it's very sort of like pure to the intent of what I think they are trying to initiate. Clearly, no one needs me to validate that this song sounds good. It's clearly a very popular track. I feel like, again, the use of the stereo field in those chorus sections just to make it sound bigger is not an arbitrary thing. It's a fundamental that is adhered to here. And it's a proof of concept for anyone wondering if that matters. It does. There's no weird resonances in the free spectrum, except if there are, in which case they're deliberate, things are glued well, it's easy to hear the vocals in the mix, and it's nice to know what that pumping so the bus compression limiting is handled. Again, it's not like -5 yellow FSI, but it's still like loud enough for the style. And again, I think a lot of these music videos, especially when they were produced or recorded or uploaded onto YouTube, there was more headroom because they were going for the older style of doing things, despite the loudness wars at the time. So ultimately, I'm actually really glad I got to hear this. I think it's a fantastic song. I'm really impressed with what they accomplished here. I just think it's well worth looking into. If it was between Song 2 and Seven Nation Army by far, even the little kind of bits of quirkiness, like with the bass tone having a bit of buzz and sizzle at the start there, despite on some speakers sounding a little more sort of smooth, I suppose. It's just these little kind of like traits that are quite appealing, and that's effectively my review of this track from an act named The White Stripes, titled Seven Nation Army. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via the various social medias and the YouTube page, and stay cool and stay safe. Please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I will catch you in the next SP reviews. Spider Hands out.